Dear friends, welcome to yet another installment of Strategic Power. The Israeli armies have disclosed shocking and controversial information about an alleged deep connection between UNRWA, the agency that cares for Palestinian refugees, and Hamas's underground tunnels. They especially highlighted the headquarters of that organization, which, according to them, includes electrical infrastructure and other related facilities. Does this revelation suggest that the UN may have a favorable inclination towards Hamas? We will discuss that here in the video, along with UNRWA's justifications. In addition, we will discuss the possible fulfillment of what Iran wants, since countries that maintain a neutral position in relation to Israel, such as Egypt and Saudi Arabia, believe that an Israeli offensive in the Rafah region would cross a red line. It is worth noting that Israel claims it still needs to capture 4 large Hamas battalions, all located in southern Gaza. What does that mean for stability in the Middle East? This news is not exactly new, as Israel had already raised these accusations before. UNRWA, a UN agency dedicated to Palestinian refugees, has existed since the first conflicts between Jews and Palestinians, even before the formation of Israel. It operates in several Middle Eastern countries, including Syria, Lebanon, Gaza Strip, West Bank, and Jordan. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, Israel began making more direct accusations, alleging that UNRWA is not pro-Palestinian, but pro-Hamas. The evidence cited by Israel includes the alleged complacency of the organization and the possible involvement of some of its members in the October 7 attacks, which intensified recent conflicts. According to Israel, the staff working in this organization are not only distant relatives or first-degree family members of Hamas and Islamic Jihad. In fact, the main leaders of these terrorist groups are infiltrated and working within this agency. In addition, some officials participated directly in attacks against Israel in the past, and others publicly celebrated when these attacks happened, encouraging more violence against Israel. In other words, an organization that should work for peace and humanitarian issues was actually being used as a political front for terrorist groups to attack Israel and convince the population that Israel is the great villain. The evidence presented by Israel shows that the Hamas tunnels are directly connected to the headquarters of that organization. Inside the headquarters, they found an arsenal of guerrilla equipment and ammunition. In other words, the entire organization was apparently working for Hamas, providing infrastructure and support for attacks against Israel. After these revelations, a lot of countries like Germany, USA, Japan, and the UK suspended money donations. More than half of the funding has already been cut off. And right now that almost 2 million people are displaced in Gaza and in need of humanitarian aid. Rafah, which we will discuss shortly, had approximately 280,000 people before October 7th and now has approximately 1,400,000, with the possibility of an Israeli offensive soon, considering that some bombings have already occurred. This creates an extremely delicate situation, and according to Israel, there is evidence that the UN was working in favor of Hamas. Lazzarini from the UN could not confirm whether this is true or not, as they abandoned the region on October 12th. Israel suggests that Hamas may have taken the institutions abandoned by the UN to use them as a logistics center. However, UNRWA denies being used as a base for terrorist groups. Israel argues that the construction of an infrastructure such as tunnels under the organization in just 4 months would be unlikely, indicating that this occurred before the current conflict. These accusations jeopardize the credibility of both the institution and the UN. As for Hamas's designation as a terrorist group, yes, Hamas is designated as a terrorist group by many countries, including the United States, Israel, the European Union, and others. So Antonio Guterres strongly defended the institution. Lazzarini, who was an important leadership, assured that funding can continue because the organization has only humanitarian objectives. It is true that many officials are Palestinian, and some may have links to groups like Islamic Jihad or Hamas, but that does not mean that the organization is involved in military or attack activities. The question is whether these people have ties to Hamas, or if it is UNRWA itself, or the UN. Remember that Israel has already attacked the UN a few times, claiming that it favors the Palestinians more than Israel. Do you think the UN as a whole has a connection with Hamas? Comment below. Speaking of which, Iran sees this situation as an opportunity to diminish Israel's and perhaps even the United States' influence in the region. During the Trump administration, there was a rapprochement between Israel and some Middle Eastern and North African countries, such as Morocco, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates. Now, Israel has announced that Hamas's last stronghold is Rafah, on the border with Egypt. Since the beginning of the attacks, Israel has targeted the cities of Gaza, Khan Yunis, and now focuses on Rafah, where there are still 4 Hamas battalions, according to reports released recently. Israel has already carried out some targeted attacks and managed to eliminate 3 high-level Hamas leaders in the city of Rafah. Now, Israel is planning a larger operation in that region. However, there is a big problem. Rafah currently houses approximately 1,400,000 people compared to the previous 280,000. Even if there are Hamas members among them, the majority are civilians. Is Israel considering carrying out such intense attacks? This could result in harm to tens of thousands of people, according to forecasts from the United States and the European Union. So far, the death toll in Palestine is estimated at approximately 30,000, but Israel does not provide official numbers. If these numbers increase drastically, authorities such as Antony Blinken and Biden have already expressed concern about Israel's conduct, emphasizing the need for more humanity. Meanwhile, Iran may be taking advantage of the situation to weaken international support for Israel and the United States. Egypt, which has had a peace agreement with Israel since 1979, may be affected if there is a large exodus of Palestinians towards its border, which could break this long-standing agreement. Saudi Arabia, for example, has shown dissatisfaction with Israel's actions, but before the attacks, it was negotiating to accept the existence of the State of Israel in exchange for certain benefits and US military support. Now they warn that if the attacks continue, it may result in forced deportations in the region, demanding an immediate ceasefire. They consider the attacks a violation of international law and call for intervention by the UN Security Council to stop the aggression, threatening Israel with serious consequences. With Egypt and Saudi Arabia speaking out, influential countries in the region, the so-called axis of resistance led by Iran, can glimpse success in its attempts to confront Israel and the United States. Israel justifies the attacks as a measure to deal with Hamas leaderships. However, previously, Israel considered options such as establishing a Palestinian state in the Sinai, currently belonging to Egypt, a proposal rejected by Egypt. It was also suggested to displace the Palestinians to artificial islands in the Mediterranean, or even to Greek islands, plans that, according to Saudi Arabia, would violate international law. Israel states that it will have an evacuation plan for the Palestinian population, but how this will be executed is still uncertain. Despite public statements, Israel says it will not violate Palestinians' rights. So do you trust Benjamin Netanyahu's words? Share your opinion in the comments.